Oh, it's time for another edition of The Winning Ticket. I am Gino Bacola here with Eric from ETOP21 Sports, and we are getting ready for another week of college football, week 4 of the NFL season. Last week was a big one, Eric. We had some important games, a little bit of movement towards the top of the college football standings. We saw one team going to come back to life a little bit with Colorado getting beat up by Oregon, and we'll have another fun 4 or 5 games to
Yep.
dive into in college, then some best bets in NFL. How's your week been, buddy?
Week's been good. Hoping to keep it going this weekend and make some money. Fortunately, a little bad luck last night in my player props with Luke Musgrave, but part of the game, looking to bounce back.
So if you are in the state of Iowa, you can actually sign up right now for a DRF Sportsbook account. We encourage you to do so. You can be playing along in minutes, and make sure you use the promo code FAST350. You can see it scrolling across the bottom of our screen right there. On this show, we're going to talk about 6 big college football games this weekend. Then we'll shift on over. We each have a couple best bets for NFL. We'll also talk about Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football this week. I'm rocking my Daily Racing Form shirt because Daily Racing Form is the best place to go if you need help handicapping the races, playing the races. I go there for my past performances. And now next couple weeks are big weeks, Eric, because we're about 5 weeks away from the Breeders' Cup. So this weekend, this weekend, there will be a bunch of horses that'll be running for the final time, trying to win a prep race to try to get into the Breeders' Cup this weekend. Next weekend, Keeneland opens. I'm actually going to be headed to the Breeders' Cup to do some work this year for DRF. I haven't been to one in a few years, and since it's right here in Santa Anita, not too far from me, but that's on the horse racing side. We're talking sports side. We're going to talk right now about a Friday night game, Eric. We're not too far away from a big game a little later on tonight, and as we've seen this year, best conference, the deepest conference, perhaps the most talented conference is not the SEC, in my opinion. It's the Pac-12. There are legitimate pro quarterbacks there. They're about 8 teams deep of really good teams, and we're going to see 2 more of them lined up tonight. We talked about Oregon State last week when they went on the road and played Washington State. That was sort of a weird game because Washington State can really move the ball through the air. I think they had about 400 yards passing in that game, but that's not really what Utah is going to do. And based on the number we're seeing right now, it does not look like we're going to get the return from Cam Rising, who had been rumored to return last week and then rumored to return this week. This number is all the way up to Oregon State -4.5 now, Eric. And a couple things. First question, how much longer do you think before we start wondering if Cam Rising is even going to come back and play this year?
I mean, I think he will. I mean, why is he still here if he wasn't going to?
Yeah, it just – we're already getting to week 5 now, right? Week 6.
Kind of feel like they're winning, so way they're not forcing him to come back. Without Stout, their front four is against the run, and that's really the key to Oregon State's attack. Is they're going to try to run the ball. There's obviously they have DJU. Do you trust DJU to win with margin? I've never been a big DJU guy. And the flip side of that, if Rising doesn't go, it's going to be on Nate Johnson. Do you trust a mobile Nate Johnson who can't really throw the ball to go on the road to Oregon State, which is a sneaky place to play?
Really tough place to play. Even when they've not been a good team, they've been a tough place to play. And now this Oregon State team is tough. They're going to be coming off of a loss, knowing that they're highly projected this year. They had, aspirations of maybe a conference championship or at least a big bowl game. You do not want to have a couple losses this early and lose a game at home. This feels like a real big bounce back spot for Oregon State. The problem is the number, right? It's moved a lot now. It's all the way up to Oregon State -4.5.
Yeah, it was at one when it opened up. Obviously, right now the value is on Utah if you're going to bet it. If you want to bet Oregon State, you can look to bet live. I think there's still value on the under just because if it's Nate Johnson, they're going to run the ball. Oregon State wants to run the ball. With the way the clock is, unders are going to kind of be the way to go. I honestly, with the college game, I like playing the first half under more because the worst thing that can happen
overtime
is the game goes under and there's overtime that you lose it that way. That's why I tend to play the first half unders more in these college games. In terms of a side, I just don't know. I don't know if Oregon State's going to be able to run the ball in Utah. I don't know if Utah's going to be able to move the ball with Johnson on the road. And I don't trust DJU. So at the end of the day, this is just a pass for me.
Yeah, I think you hit the major points here. Utah's offense has not been fantastic. They're like 11th worst of Power 5 teams in EPA per pass, 4.4 yards per play. They rank 115th. They only had 219 total yards of offense last week at home against UCLA. They scored 14 points. One of those touchdowns came on an interception return.
Yeah.
So, they're, just as you said, though, very good against the run. They're number 3 in the country in rush defense. They held UCLA to 9 net rushing yards and only 243 total yards last week. They've only allowed 51 rushing yards per game this year and only 2 yards-ish per carry, 2.2. Only given up 2 rushing touchdowns so far on the year. So that's strength on strength. Oregon State wants to hit you in the mouth and run right at you. And as you said, DJ has been struggling in the last 2 games. Both of those games, he's been under 50% completions. He'll hit a big play here and there, but he's not very accurate, not consistent. I think what they're going to want to do, and that, again, points to your under as the play here, both of these teams want to run the ball.
Yeah.
Oregon State is going to try to run, and I think they want to get DJ running too. Yeah. You get him running a little bit early. That'll open up the defense a little bit. It'll make things easier for him. Last week, he had 9 carries for 61 yards. They ran for 242 yards on 32 carries in a game that they were down by 21 points. So this is a prolific rushing offense. Martinez, they're averaging 225 rushing yards a game. Martinez averaging 108. They're 4th in EPA per rush, 5th in rushing grades, 4th in run blocking grade. Very good defending the run also. So just a lot of strength on strength. You mentioned the home field advantage. They've won 6 in a row at home. They've won 13 of their last 14 at home. So these 2 teams are actually both very good home teams and not quite as good when they go out on the road in an environment like this for Nate Johnson, where if they get pinned back or Oregon State gets up, might be a little difficult for him. I agree with you. What's that under that what's the total that you're seeing right now, Eric?
Let me take a look.
Let's see. Because, that felt like the way if we were going to attack this.
At 44 for the first half, 22.5. So I'd probably go under 22.5 for the first half.
Let's move to our next game. Morning game. How weird is this? Last week, USC plays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, 7:30 p.m. local time. This week, they got the big noon kickoff. So you go from the latest game one week to the earliest game this week, and they play against Colorado, coming off a big loss after all the hype. 3 wins, they get ranked, and then back to reality. They play an Oregon team that was fantastic. Oregon is ranked number 2 in the country in EPA per play on offense. Team that's ranked number 1 is USC. Oregon scored a touchdown on 6 of their first 7 drives in that game. Colorado can't stop them. Colorado's got a bad defense. They've got a bad offensive line, and they can't run the ball. This is what happens when you have just a bunch of transfers and not a lot of depth yet. They'll build, and Coach Prime's doing a fantastic job yet. But in games like this against teams like Oregon, they'll have a tough time. Now, this is a big number for a USC team that's going on the road. And Eric, as a USC fan, week 1, I was watching them going, the defense looks the same. Week 2 and week 3, in their second and third games, the defense was much better. All the real scoring came in like real garbage time. They didn't allow much against inferior opponents. Then against Arizona State, coming off the bye, whatever it was, late, flat spot, coming off the bye, was really disappointing. The defense was bad. Again, allowing big plays, poor tackling, just over and over. They did step up late in kind of a scary few drives where USC and Arizona State were like neck and neck. An Arizona State team that had just turned the ball over 8 times the week before. So SC was very sloppy, kind of lifeless last week. And I'm really curious how they will respond to an early game like this, because they don't play a lot of early games like this.
Yeah.
What I like is that they have a good leader, right? Teams that are led by a guy like Caleb Williams usually are less likely to stub their toe or have games where they completely don't show up. And if you just look at USC and the way these two teams are built, like honestly, Eric, if USC handed the ball off every single play, I don't know how many times they would get stopped for like, they could probably pick up a first down within 3 to 4 downs almost every time, because their line will just be able to wear down Colorado's. This is a big number, though. I'm sure Colorado is going to feel like they want to bounce back. I would never be laying this with USC on the road like this, but it concerns me because now Colorado is without probably their best player, their two-way player, who is going to be still out for a few weeks. They're also possibly without the safety, Sanders, who was in the hospital last week. He was urinating blood. Not good after the Oregon game. So they may be without a couple of their best pieces, and that's not how you want to come into a game against a team like USC if you're trying to win. But the question I ask you more than anything is, not even, maybe you think they can win, maybe you don't. Can they at least keep this game within 3 touchdowns?
I mean, at the end of the day, you have to say to yourself, can you trust this USC defense? It's really struggled when you look at all the stats to limit explosive plays. That's what this team is in Colorado, explosive plays. I looked at USC, their plays, their defense is on the field. So the last 3 games, 71 plays, gave up 5 yards per carries. 66 plays, gave up 5.3 yards per play. 72 plays, 5 yards. Flip side, and I know it's kind of like a tough comparison because Utah's more of a quote-unquote defensive team, but those two are the cream of the cream of the Pac-12. So just kind of as a reference point, USC, 67, 3.6 yards. Utah, 67, 3.6 yards, 42 plays, 3 yards. Against Baylor, 57 plays, 5.9. I just don't know if this USC team defensively is going to be able to get stops. I know they brought in that kid, I'm spacing on his name, of course, to kind of be the wall in the middle to make up and be this explosive defense. But that ASU game, they just really struggled. They gave up 5 yards per play. I think, to me, this says backdoor just written.
Yeah, it's like just a massive number
from Colorado. And this is kind of Colorado's last showbiz game, if you will.
Yeah, you're right.
They're going to be buried on the Pac-12 channel after this.
Yeah.
So I expect them to.
The half is key here.
Yeah.
Too, for a backdoor, if you're on the Colorado side, because like I'm a big USC fan. You can't lay this with USC here. The only thing that worries me if you're playing Colorado in a game like this is what we're saying about their attrition right now already. They're getting banged up and they don't have a lot of depth. And if they start losing a couple more key pieces, they just may have a hard time stopping USC.
Correct.
And they may be able to hit some explosive plays, but it still may not matter. It still may be, they score 3 or 4 times, but they just may have a tough time stopping SC. And it's tough because sometimes USC, when you have a quarterback like Caleb, who's so good and capable of hitting, like they can, if you're Lincoln Riley, it's almost like you've got all these weapons. Sometimes you can get a little too cute, and that's where they can get themselves into trouble. But SC, number 1 scoring offense, 55 points per game, 3rd in the nation in yards per game. Colorado 0-16 all time against USC. They got sacked 8 times last week. USC is 3rd in the country in pass rushing grade. That's the one thing about their defense. They can put pressure on the quarterback. It's the scheme. I just don't like their defensive coordinator. And it's the 3rd consecutive defensive coordinator for USC that have been more of like a put the pressure on, like create havoc kind of defensive coordinator, but they allow big plays. I don't like that as much. I'm just not as much of a fan of that, especially when you're at a place like USC where you should be able to get talented enough guys on the defensive front where you don't need to blitz a bunch and you don't need to play mismatches like that on the defensive side and allow those big plays. Colorado feels like the right side in this game at 21.5. Let's move along, Eric, to our next game, Kentucky and Florida. Florida is at Kentucky here, and actually Kentucky has won 2 in a row over Florida. This year, they've won their first 4 games, Kentucky, by 11-plus points, but they have played 3 defenses outside the top 80, and this is going to be a step up for them. They've played a very weak strength of schedule. Explosive plays so far for them, not very good and consistent on a down-to-down basis. Generally, when you step up and play better competition, that's tougher to get those explosive plays than it is to get the consistent down-to-down stuff. They only have a 43% success rate on standard downs. They were outgained by Vandy last week. But the offensive line is also another question mark for me. They get a big test today. Some continuity here. They already have 5 interceptions, does Leary. Can he really get it deep down the field? I'm not sure how healthy he is, Eric, when you sort of watch him, if he's completely recovered from some previous injuries. Vandy was pretty good at running the ball last week, so are they going to be able to stop Florida's running game here? Last week, they scored 2 interception returns for touchdowns. So those aren't things you can always count on in a game. Now, for Florida, for them, pretty simple. Kind of defense, running, short passing stuff. They have not scored 30 yet against an FBS opponent this year, so they don't have a big, high-powered offense. The defense is number 5 in total defense. Pro Football Focus grades them as the number 10 defense overall. They just held Charlotte to 11 first downs and only 200 total yards. They're only allowing 13.5 points per game. But they do give up some explosive plays here and there. Still really good in yards allowed per game. In the top in the conference, only allowing 162 passing yards per game. For Mertz, it's all short stuff. They're only 55th offensively in yards per play. So not great on that side. Lots of short stuff. Mertz, 77.8% completion percentage. That leads the conference. That's 4th in the nation. He'll look for Pearsall a little bit. He had a big game last week with 6 catches, 104 yards. So they'll try to lean on the run, defense. That's how they'll try to hit you. Kentucky's a little different, right? They're going to try to get you with some more explosive plays here and there, not quite as consistent. How do you see this thing playing out?
I got Kentucky when I was basically a pick 'em at -115. I'll take the home team here. I think the big thing for Kentucky is they're getting Horsley back. Horsley has NFL type potential. He's going to come back on the offensive line to anchor the offensive line. It's no secret Florida likes to run, statistically speaking, and I know they could be a little bit skewed because of the competition. Florida does grade out well defending the run. But the one thing that Kentucky grades out good defending the run. In terms of Florida, when you look at who they've played and when you look at the stats, they've struggled to stop the explosive plays.
Yep. And that's where Kentucky hits you.
I think Kentucky is going to be able to get some explosive plays. You mentioned Larry, the offensive coordinator came out, so he's battling injuries, been getting better and better and better. Just need to hit. I think he's going to look better this game because he is getting healthier, take advantage of Florida's ability to allow explosive plays. And at the end of the day, do you really trust Mertz on the road?
Well, and how about this? Florida has lost 8 of 9. They're 8 of their last 9 on the road. They lost this year in Utah to open the season. They are only 1-6 outside of Gainesville for Coach Napier.
Yeah, and when you look at their schedule, they played Utah with no Rising.
Yep.
And they have Johnson
still lost
in the round.
Yeah.
They beat McNeese State. They beat Tennessee, who neither one of us are high on.
No.
Who may, at the end of the may struggle to get 7, 8 wins. And then the total flat spots struggled moving the ball in Charlotte. I just like Kentucky here. That place is very tough to plan. It's going to be loud. This is going to be like, I hate to use the term Super Bowl, but this is like Kentucky Super Bowl just because of the rivalry with Florida. I'll take Kentucky here. I'd still lay the 1.5. I got the money line.
I'd be fine up to a field goal here with Kentucky. Looking for 3 in a row over Florida. Me and Eric both on the Kentucky side. Eric, let's go next to Texas, Kansas. We have Texas -17.5 against Kansas. 2 years ago, this game was 50 in the 50s when Kansas upset Texas. Since then, Texas and Coach Sark, I got to give him a lot of credit. He's done a lot better over the last couple years. On Kansas' side, they're going to need their quarterback Daniels to make some big plays like he did in 2021 when he upset Texas. He's 5th among Power 5 quarterbacks in passing grade, but really it's the running that could keep Kansas in this game. If we're talking about next week that there was an upset or this was a close game, it's probably because Daniels was keeping the Texas defense off balanced because they're talented, but I think he can, with a really good game, he can keep them off balance there. they're the most experienced team in the Big 12 also. They return the most production from last year. Their running back Neal averages 99 yards per game, 6.9 yards per carry. They got to establish him a little bit, take some pressure off Daniels, and that'll just keep them well balanced. Last week, they had a fumble return for a touchdown and a 30-yard pick six. The three offenses they have faced this year, though, an average of 85th offensive efficiency. So not good. This is going to be a big-time step up in class for Kansas, and they're not good defending the run. They're outside the top 100 in EPA per rush allowed. Now, Texas has not really been able to establish the run all that well this year without Bijan. Their best running really has come from Ewers, but this Texas team is really well-rounded, Eric. You know, they're 10th in defensive grade in the Power 5, 10th in EPA allowed per play, and then the offense have scored 30 points against every opponent so far, including Alabama and Baylor.
I like this Texas team a lot. I was very invested in them coming in to win it all. I have Ewers Heisman tickets. And Stark is sneaky good. He does some stuff that I really think that
he's a good coordinator, and he's getting better as a head coach now, right? Because he's had a few different opportunities, but he's always been a good play caller.
Yeah,
and setting guys up.
Like with Oklahoma on deck, this is kind of a quote unquote sleepy spot. So what is Stark doing every day at practice this week per the media? He is ending the practice showing highlights of when Texas lost to Kansas a couple years ago, and Kansas put up 50, just to kind of have them locked in there. And he's not going to be this coach to do stupid stuff, chase points. He's really good at sensing, hey, you know, it's a good drive. It's a win. We're going to put points on. We saw that with the Alabama. They got the early turnover. They drove it down to the 5, 4th and short. They could have gone for it, tried to score a touchdown. But he felt like, hey, let's get 3 on the board, get some confidence to Ewers, and we'll go from there. Because we're not going to win or lose the game if we go for chase 7 points on our first drive. Kansas has all these athletic weapons, but Texas has the athletic weapons to combat that. And I think you have to look at the size mismatch when you look at Texas' offensive line versus Kansas's offensive line. The lean that those guys are going to get on it, it's going to wear down. My strategy going in this game is, if Texas is up 21-3, 24-0, 28-0, 28-3, whatever, I'm going to look at the second half for Kansas.
Because they're not going to.
Yeah, I think they're going to look to rail it back, become very generic, kind of like we saw Oklahoma did, Oregon, make a statement in that first half, then kind of go on cruise control. I'd look at Kansas second half. But in terms of pre-flop stuff, nothing. In a perfect world, this game's close and we can get Texas
a little bit better next week
against Oklahoma, who I'm not that high on. But we can only wish that for this game is a pass. Maybe look at Kansas second half.
Yeah, Daniels will be the best quarterback that Texas has faced so far this year. He can make some big plays for Texas. Who's going to stop the tight end? He has a couple 100-yard games already. He's averaging 22 yards per catch there. So absolute stud. Let's move on, Eric. 2 more college games to discuss. Duke, college game day, heading there for the first time. The new coach for Duke is 13-4 in their last 17. And in those games, they're plus 21 in turnovers. That's why this Duke team is winning games. They're well coached. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They win field position. They prevent explosive plays. They've won all 4 games this year by 21 plus points. But, you know, you dive into that Clemson game. Clemson had the ball 3 times inside the 10 and scored 0 on those. Their quarterback, he's actually the highest graded running quarterback in the nation. Similar to what I was saying about Kansas, in that similar to what I was saying about Kansas, Eric, if we're talking about Duke being successful in this game, we're talking about the quarterback running well in this game, I think, and having a big game with his legs and with the arm. Duke just doesn't seem to have the type of run blocking. I don't know if they can go at a defense like this, like Notre Dame. But what's nice is they do have some experience against Hartman. They played against him last year. They beat Wake Forest 34-31. On the other side for Notre Dame, they had a big chance last week. Only 10 men on the field on the final 2 plays of the game when they lose. Just brutal. How do they react to that crushing loss? Because they're a better team, and they have some real spots where I don't know what Duke can do. It may be in the trenches, but this Notre Dame team, you wonder how they will bounce back. They ran on 61% of snaps last week. I just didn't think they had a very good game plan. They didn't have Hartman take very many shots. Why do you get a quarterback like that if you're not going to have him take a few more? He had a mistake or two, but they needed to let him loose a little bit more in that game. I think they played it way too conservative. Last year they lost the week after playing Ohio State as a 3-touchdown favorite to Marshall. So, this loss this year was way worse than that one emotionally, how it happened on the final play of the game there. I mean, if Notre Dame just leans on the run, they'll be tough, but they've got some big injuries at wide receiver, and their defense has been really, really good against quarterbacks. They're allowing 47% completion rate. They've only allowed 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. They've also won 29 straight games against ACC opponents. Talk to us, Eric, about this matchup.
So I look, 2021, Freeman's first year. They lost to Cincy. The following week, they didn't cover versus Vatech. Last year, they lost to Ohio State. The following week, they lost to Marshall. Later on in the year, they beat Clemson and then almost lost to Navy. So in these letdown type spots, these Freeman coach teams haven't been focused for him and are primed for a letdown. You mentioned Hartman. Why not throwing the ball? I rewatched the wide receiver just can't get separation. They just can't create separation. They can't create space. And when you're playing an Elko team, a good defensive-minded team, this is going to be tough for them. I don't think these wide receivers are going to be able to create separation, which is going to put more pressure on Hartman to throw in a tight window, which isn't his strength. Also, we need to remember Elko was on this Notre Dame staff. He wanted this job. He was passed over for this job. This team is going to be very locked in and very motivated. And I think we're losing track about how good of a coach he actually is. They're in the letdown spots last week at UConn, and they boat raced them. That game wasn't even close. That was professional. That was a professional game by college kids. I actually like them in this spot. I bet them on the money line and plus the 5.5. I think Leonard will be able to expand plays. I think Duke is going to be able to stop the run. I don't think Notre Dame has the playmakers on the outside to do anything to take advantage. So I'm going to take Duke here plus the 5.5, and I took the money line at plus 190.
Dookie for Eric. No real strong opinion for me in this one as we move to our final game, LSU at Mississippi, the 112th meeting of these two teams. LSU has 3 straight wins since that loss to Florida State. They were able to just sneak by Arkansas last week on a game-winning field goal, 5 seconds left. Man, that stud wide receiver, Neighbors, has caught 13 passes for 230 yards against Mississippi State. He had 130 against Arkansas. Thomas is also a really nice wide receiver. Daniel's coming off a big game. He had 320 yards, 4 touchdowns last week. He had 343 the week before. He's improving as a passer. Still seems like that's where he'll make a mistake, though. Maybe trying to force it or maybe trying to do a little too much. Very good offensive line for LSU. All 5 of their starters grade out above average. But where you can hit them, they have a miserable secondary. They are bad. That secondary is awful. They are outside the top 100 in success rate, explosive play percentage, EPA per play, pass down success rate, tackling grade, and coverage grade. They're outside the top 100 in all of those, the secondary. Just not graded out well at all. They don't have one individual player in their secondary based on Pro Football Focus that ranks higher than number 185. So just really bizarre for like a top level program to not have much talent back there in the secondary at all. Can Mississippi hit them there because they've had some injuries with the wide receiver, tight end. A lot of their best players have been banged up. Even Judkins has not been running the ball well really at all so far. And that's the key for them, right? All of these injuries, they haven't been healthy. They only scored 10 points last week. I mean, they got an All-American, preseason All-American, who's only averaging 3.5 yards per carry. And that game, what was a little bit, I don't want to say eye-opening, but on paper, it looked like a really nice spot for Ole Miss there against an Alabama team that came in a little struggling. They hadn't looked very good yet. They hadn't figured their offense out. They were switching back to another quarterback. The Alabama secondary looked vulnerable. So there were some things heading in that felt like it might be a really good spot for Ole Miss to be competitive, and they just weren't there, Eric. But again, it's a week-to-week game. And how do you look at this game, this number? Have you played anything? Will you play anything?
I took the Rebels here. I took Ole Miss.
I think that's the spot.
2.5.
Yeah.
The main thing I look at is a tough spot. I mean, the way that Alabama limped in, you knew that was going to be a tough effort. Ole Miss, they did play them tough. They did have a chance to do some stuff.
The defense played really well.
And the thing with the offense is that was the first game back for their top 3 wide receivers and their best running back. Historically speaking, it's the second game where we see these guys that come back do what they can do because they're a little bit rusty. And coming back your first game against Alabama, I mean, that's a tall ask. Now you get LSU. LSU secondary is outside the top 100. Dart is getting back all his top 3 playmakers on the outside. They're going to be able to throw on this team. That's going to set up the run. They are getting their top running back. Ole Miss's defense has gone better every single game. And then also the big trend that I found was conference games when a team isn't ranked, 65%. I mean, they're 65% at home in the SEC. So, look, I'm going to take Ole Miss here. I think they're going to be able to win this game. I'm going to take them plus the 2.5, though, just because I know everyone thinks 3 is this key number, which it is. But now in the college game, when this game gets to overtime and you do those 2-pointers back and forth, 2.5 has become just as important. So I'll take the 2 Ole Miss here plus the 2.5 instead of just playing the money line.
Yeah, Ole Miss got to get a little bit better on third down, and when the game slows down a little bit in the red zone and on third down. They were only 3 of 13 last week, so 4 of 27 on third down versus Bama and Tulane. Dart is one of those guys I've seen play for USC, such a wide range of outcomes type guy. He got beat up a little bit last week. Feel like he's got a good game in there, and this should be a really nice spot for him. Remember, they were 7-0 last year before LSU beat them. They were all the way up to number 7. And I like what I've seen from this Ole Miss defense a little bit. Eric, I'm on the same spot with you. We are on Ole Miss there to finish up our college plays. Ole Miss on the money line for me and plus the 2.5. Let's shift on over and talk some NFL. We've got NFL Sunday in London, starting bright and early with Jacksonville and Atlanta. And then we continue on through Sunday. Eric has a couple best plays. I have a couple best plays. We'll talk Sunday night football. We'll also talk Monday night football. Eric, first up for you. You got this one at +7 a little earlier in the week. We're seeing the number around like 6.5 or so. You're going to go to the Patriots, who are playing against the Dallas Cowboys. Talk to us about why you like New England here.
I'm taking the Patriots here just because I just feel that they're going to be able to move the ball running. I know everyone talks about how good this rushing defense, how good this defense is in general. The Cowboys are 8th in the league, bottom 8, defending the rush. You are going to be able to run on this team. Diggs is huge what they do. Not having Diggs there is going to be huge to what they look to be able to do. You look at the Patriots, there's a world where the Patriots are 3-0 in my mind. Script got off against New England, couple turnovers, were able to move the ball. 6 plays inside the Dolphin zone, only scoring 3 points. And Cowboys potentially without 3 offensive linemen. the rookie that the Patriots drafted, he's been completely money. He's going to be able to shut down CeeDee Lamb. We kind of saw it in the game against the Cowboys, in the game against the Cardinals. Prescott tends to force the ball to Lamb. If you have a lockdown corner shutting him down, that's not going to be good. That could lead to some turnovers. Not having the 3 linemen potentially, I think that the Pats pass rush is going to be able to get home against Prescott. And on the flip side, Belichick's like 62% ATS against the dog. I just think this is a good spot for the Patriots, 7 or higher. I'm going to take it. And I just don't trust McCarthy laying these big numbers.
Yeah, the Cowboys come off that awful loss where they were down by 12 with 7 minutes to go. They go on a 14-play drive that ends with an interception. They have 8 run plays on a drive when they're down, trying to get back in the game. It just didn't make any sense. That's the kind of McCarthy stuff we're talking about. They were only 1 of 5 in the red zone. All 4 of their second half drives made it into the red zone. They only scored 6 points. They were missing 3 offensive linemen, just lost Diggs. As you pointed out, it's like a domino effect. Now all of a sudden you got Gilmore having to line up against the number 1 guys, and that's not really the role he should be playing anymore. I start to wonder, looking at them now, Giants week 1 against a bad offensive line.
But remember though, how did that game start out? The Giants
moved the ball.
Moving the ball with ease down that field. There was no pushback at all. And then there was just that blocked field goal, then another turnover, and things just kind of fell off the wheel from there.
Week 2, the Jets with Zach Wilson, who has been awful. And then the bad loss to the Cardinals. What they don't seem to have is who's the guy after Lamb, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have Brandon Cooks back there. You have Michael Gallup.
It just, they haven't had that guy establish themselves yet as the next guy after Lamb if you take him out. And I like Cooks. I've been higher on Cooks overall than most, but they got to get that next weapon there. They had 13 penalties for 107 yards. 4 of them were automatic first downs. They're 27th in the league in penalties. So we're talking about a team that is laying almost a touchdown, and depending on when or where you've played, maybe a touchdown. That's not been good in the red zone. That hasn't had a very tough schedule, and that's penalized a lot, and we don't love their coach. I'm not even a big Patriots fan. They got their 15th straight win over the Jets. I would play a Zeke Elliott anytime touchdown here. I think they're going to try to get him a touchdown against his old team. They got him a lot more involved last week, 16 carries for 80 yards. What concerns me at playing this under 7 is that they are starting to get a little bit more banged up on both sides of the line, the Patriots, the offense and the defensive side. But they generated a ton of pressure last week against the Jets. I'm still not confident in their offense, but low total, it's only about 43 and a half. And the big number, one of the things you're supposed to do always is take the dog in that situation. Eric likes the Pats. Go ahead.
Solier, who's their offensive line coach, historically speaking, his lines struggle to pass block. They do really good run blocking, but pass blocking, they struggle to do that. Without potentially 3 offensive linemen, I think the Patriots are going to be able to get home. Cards rushed for 222 yards on this team. I know we talk a little bit of DFS. One guy that has been an insane disappointment is Stevenson. I think a lot of people in DFS are going to be looking to play Elliott with a revenge angle, get him for a touchdown. And you got Stevenson just kind of chilling there, doing nothing. Maybe this could be a play if you're going to do the millionaire maker. Look to do Stevenson.
Okay, well, we will continue along, Eric. My play, I locked in the Bills at -2.5 earlier in the week. This thing is at -3 now. I'm okay with this at 3, and I wouldn't want to go above 3.5. But we're coming off a game where everybody's talking about the Dolphins. They were incredible. They scored 70 points, most points since 1950. Could have scored even more, but chose not to. They've scored 130 points through 3 weeks, second most ever. 1,651 total yards through 3 weeks, the most ever, averaging 43.3 points per game. Tua's been awesome. He really, 2 things that impress me the most about this team that might be not getting talked about enough, because Tua's getting talked about and Hill gets discussed. And last week it was Mostert and A-Chain but the offensive line and McDaniel, the coach, he puts everybody in position to succeed. All the plays are beautifully designed and dynamic. They scored on 10 of their first 12 offensive plays. Tua completed his first 18 pass attempts, and it was just wide open routes, mistakes by the defense, easy stuff for Tua, but the offensive line is giving him time. And this has been a line that has not been good, like at all, Eric, in the last couple of years. So they have been helpful, and I got to give them a little bit of credit, but I think it's a good spot to fade Miami right now because they're so hyped. They're so like a little overvalued. Everybody's talking about what they've done. The Bills have quietly won pretty well in back-to-back weeks. They won by 28 in both games. It's the first time since 2002 a team lost in week 1, then won the next 2 weeks by 28 or more. They've got the best coverage grade in the NFL through 3 games. A lot of those sacks last week were because everything was locked up downfield and Howell didn't have anywhere to go. And if you think about Washington, like with Terry Mack and some of their pieces, their receivers are not awful. They have some guys in there that can run routes. So they were able to put a ton of pressure on the quarterback without blitzing last week. And it was a good game for Allen. 0 sacks, passed for 218 yards, a touchdown, interception, but he had a touchdown run early in the fourth quarter, and they just look much more balanced overall. I think the Bills, honestly, are the more well-balanced team. I still have some concerns about Miami in a game that slows down a little bit if Tua has to make some big throws against a good defense. And I still have some issues with the Miami defense and their personnel. I want to see what they'll be like when they're attacked against a team like this. The Miami defense got shredded against the Chargers when they played a good offense. So I think the Bills might be able to do something similar to them. I like the Bills in here. And I know you've got some good numbers about teams, like reasons why we should fade Miami, right? Coming off of a big win like that, or a big score like that.
Teams 3-0 ATS are 42% against the number in week 4. 3-0 ATS and are road dogs in week 4. That number drops down to 12.5%. When a team is won by 38 points or more, the next week they're 41.4% ATS. Coming off scoring 40 points, 46.8% ATS. All the signs just tend to point. I think the big thing that everyone gets lost in with how good Miami is. Look, this is going to be the best offense, best defense, top 5 units. Eli Apple, Xavier Howard really struggle defensively. The other guy they have, Kohao, he's very good. He'll probably match up with Diggs. Bear Price is going to be a good Gabe Davis week. I like the Bills here, and I think they're going to be able to cover this number. I wouldn't surprise me if they win this game by 7 or more.
Okay, Eric, we're going to go to your next play. Talk to us about the Titans and Coach Vrabel here. Vrabel as a dog, right?
Going back to my roots. Vrabel as a dog, 61% against the number as a home dog, 62.5% against the number. Also, we talk about this buying low, selling high. Teams that scored 3 points or less the previous week are 56, 34, and 2. That's 62% ATS. There's 2 teams that fall under this category this week, the Titans and the Commanders. The strength of this Titans defense is their defensive line. Bengals offensive line has struggled. Burrow has this calf injury. He's not mobile. I talked to somebody who has connections to the Bengals on a week ago on Saturday. I texted him. I asked him, I go, what do you think is going to happen? He said, I don't think he should play, but they're 0-2. So I think he's going to play. That was basically kind of like the text message I got in so many words. It's a little bit more serious than people realize. Why is that important? Burrow holds onto the ball longer than any quarterback in the league just because of the routes that the Bengals run. I think the defensive line, Simmons and everyone, is going to be able to get to Burrow. Flip side, the Titans are going to look to run the ball. Titans offensive line is getting healthy. Big Pete's going to be coming back from injury. Why is that important? Last year, the strength of this Bengals defensive line was stopping the run. They gave up 103.5 yards per game. That was the 5th least in the league. This year, 3 weeks in, They're giving up 151.7 yards per game rushing. That's third worst. I think this is going to be a bounce back game for Henry. I think Henry's going to get it going on the ground. This is going to be able to open up stuff for Tannehill. Those worried about Tannehill passing against the Bengals back four is a nightmare. It's a completely new back four. It's not nearly as good as what it was last year. This defense has taken a huge step backwards. It is a liability. I'll take the Titans here as a home dog. I bet it at 2.5.
Yeah, I'm on that side with you too. You look at what happened in that Bengals game. The Rams offensive line started getting banged up and just having a ton of problems. And then they just couldn't move the ball. That's really what happened in the game. The Bengals still didn't look good on offense. They were 1 of 7 on third down in the first half. They only scored 6 points. They ended the night only 5 of 17 on third down. They got an interception of the Rams with the ball on the 41-yard line and couldn't do anything with it. So I'm not all that convinced that they're back. Tennessee, that game last week, yeah, they had 94 total yards. It didn't look fantastic. The secondary struggled. They didn't look great against Cleveland, but Cleveland's defense has been like historically good through a few weeks. Really, really good. And like small things, I love Vrabel just like you. He's one of my favorite coaches in the league. I thought there were a couple small things in the game and that wasn't his best. They should have kicked the field goal right before the half when it was 13-3. It would have been 13-6. And then you sort of feel a little bit different. Instead, they try to go for it. Tannehill takes a bad sack. They can't get any points. And then all of a sudden, you just got this bad momentum heading into the half and just never really could get out of the box in the second half. I think they're going to play a lot better in here too. They had 8 penalties and 4 of them gave Cleveland an automatic first down. That's another thing that's not as much of a Vrabel thing. Like you're usually not penalties and not giving away free yards, things like that. Eric on the Titan side, I'm along with him there on the Titan side. Let me get to my next one. Cardinals. This one is in 14 and a half-ish range. And we look at a Cardinals team that comes off of a victory last week against Dallas. And this Cardinals team, it's not really fluky to me, Eric, when I start diving into some of the numbers for the Cardinals, because they could be 3-0 in week 1. They had the lead in the fourth quarter against Washington, and Washington sort of locked down late. And then week 2, they're up 28-7 against the Giants. The Giants come all the way back late. And then week 3, they beat up on the Cowboys, and now they play a very good 49ers team here. But I think that at 2 touchdowns or over, I definitely would be on the Cardinals side. They're 10th in EPA per play on offense. They're 9th in EPA per rush. So over 3 games so far, that's a good sample size to tell you that they're an above average team offensively, and they really ran the ball well against Dallas. So that's the template for them to stay in the game. Can they not get down big early? Can they keep Connor to pick up some first downs here, keep their possessions long enough? I want to give Jonathan Gannon some credit. He's done a really good job with this roster. And then on the opposite side, you've got San Francisco, who's very, very good. But I always feel, Eric, like they're a tad overvalued because the way they win games, they sort of beat up on a lot of really bad teams. And sometimes their numbers look a little bit inflated. Purdy hasn't been quite as sharp. He's graded as quarterback number 20. And you look at the game against the Rams. The Rams were in that game and were really outplaying the 49ers through a lot of it until a couple bad bounces on passes. So I'm going to take the Cardinals, the divisional opponent here, getting a big, big number. Cardinals plus the 14.5 on this one. Anything you want to mention on this game?
Something I've noticed is betting tight end unders against the Cardinals. Just because Fred Warner is elite covering the tight end. And for me, this is usually the spot I would jump on.
Sure.
And the thing that worries me is the Cardinals just beat the Cowboys.
So
if they didn't beat the Cowboys, I would be in the pool with you swimming. But the fact that they beat the Cowboys
scares you.
I'm just, now you got Dobbs trending on social media, making videos of him not being able to get a jersey at the pro shop. Normally I'd play a number like this, but I'm just going to sit this one out. player props, I'd probably look. Cardinals do struggle defending the tight end. Maybe a Kittle receiving yards over and a Zach Ertz receiving yards under. In terms of the side, I can't get there. I want to get there, but I can't get there.
Eric, your final play is going to be Texans versus the Steelers. Texans are a 2.5-point favorite in here at home, and those young kids are really playing well. Stroud, Dell, Anderson making massive contributions. Stroud breaking records, 900 yards over his first 3 career games, no interceptions. Last week, he did that without 4 offensive linemen. He's actually had leading the league, or second in the league in drops with 7. So his receivers have dropped 7 passes as well. Those numbers could be even better. He was really good against the blitz. He just looks calm out there. Yeah. They've done a good job preparing him. And overall, they were down 8 starters, 4 offensive linemen, and they beat up the division favorite there.
It's kind of amazing what a quarterback can do,
right?
When he's given proper coaching.
Yep. And he didn't even have a bunch of his pieces. Like we said, his offensive line was all banged up, but he just has some, and he doesn't even have like a number one. He doesn't have a Jefferson or a Cooper Kupp receiver or, a Keenan Allen, someone who can go out there and make plays over and over and over. He's got like 3 or 4 solid pass catchers, a couple good veterans and then 1 or 2 young guys, but it's really been him. And then on the flip side for Pittsburgh, you've got a team that's offense is 30th in EPA per dropback. They're only better than the Jets and the Bears so far this year. They've not been good on offense. And until they show a little bit more offensively, I don't know how many teams they should be favored over on the road. I really don't. That's my concern with this game. Now, as someone who's going to back the Texans like you, where I'm worried is the offensive line. If Watt can get to Stroud early and often and make him uncomfortable, but that's the one real key spot. And if they are able to just use the passing game and run like as a short running game, like short passing game and run the ball a little bit, I really do like this matchup for them. And I'm someone who liked Pittsburgh coming into the year. Actually was, I think, higher than the common perception on both of these teams coming into the year. I like the Texans with you, though. Talk to us more about why you like Houston in this spot.
Tomlin, road favorite. I got this at 3, so this is based off 3 or more. 22-31. That's 40% ATS. Texans and the defenses are getting healthier. They're going to be without Tunsil again, which kind of hurts. Pickett, he did look good against the Raiders, but as the Raiders have a ton of issues. This Texans secondary, for even being depleted, they're playing pretty damn good. Their defense kept them in it. In the Ravens game, that was Stroud's first game, kind of struggled a little bit on the road. They played great against Trevor Lawrence. I like this team. I like where it's headed. Pitt has some O-line issues. Najee Harris is non-existent. Najee Harris cannot get anything going. They can't create the holes for him to run. The way to beat this Texans team is running the ball. I think the Steelers are going to struggle running the ball. Also, flip side, you can run. Hayward. When there's no Cam Hayward, you can run the ball. He's still banged up. I think the Texans are going to be able to run the ball on the Steelers. And historically speaking, Steelers are one of the teams. There's a handful of teams that their fans really travel well. Steelers in that circle. But what's happening on Sunday? J.J. Watt is going into the Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame, whatever thing the Texans do. So what does that mean, though? That means there's going to be a very strong Texans type
good energy. Yep.
And not have Steeler fans there like it normally is. So I like the Texans here. I'm not a big Kenny Pickett guy. As Antonio Brown says, Matt Canada needs to go to Canada. That offense is really struggling. They're really missing Deontay Johnson. He was the alpha. Pickens, more the field stretcher, quote unquote, home run hitter. This team is not looking that good. I'm going to look to, and they're, in my eyes, they're a bluff 2-1.
Oh, yeah. It's defense.
They beat the Browns on 2 defensive touchdowns. Josh McDaniel doesn't understand math.
Yeah, that was.
I don't understand. I
think I told you I had that stat. That's never happened before. There's never been a coach that's attempted to kick a field goal in a situation like that when they only needed 5 yards that late in the game, because nobody would do it. It doesn't make sense. You just go for it. If it's 4th and 5 or 4th and 4 or anything less, you go for it. If you just got to get 5 yards to pick up another set of downs or a score, and nope, he did not. We are on the Texans there. Let's get to Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. Just one Monday Night Football game this week. Sunday night, Taylor Swift is going to be there live in New York for the Chiefs at the Jets. The Chiefs, they had their get-right game last week against the Bears. They scored on 7 straight possessions, 4 touchdowns from the running backs. Offensive line, something to keep an eye on, though, against a good defensive front like the Jets, because their offensive tackle, Taylor, they keep picking on him now and calling penalties on him over and over and over after letting him get away with everything week one.
Like Collinsworth or whoever.
They called him out.
Yeah, they kept on calling him out. So now,
and so they overcompensated on it now, and they've sort of made an example out of him. He had 2 more penalties in this game. He had 5 last week, and one of those penalties nullified a 50-yard touchdown pass. This year for the Chiefs, it's been their defense. They're 5th in EPA per play allowed, in particular the passing defense, 4th in EPA per dropback allowed. And I don't know how the Jets are going to be able to score on them. That's the play for me in this game, just kind of targeting the under here. The number has moved Jets' way. It was like 9.5, I think, when we were talking about it a couple days ago, Eric. And now I'm seeing Chiefs minus 8.5 here. The Jets also having some offensive line issues. Browns on injured reserve. They had to move some pieces around. They allowed 3 sacks, and they could only run for 38 yards. Wilson, since he's been starting for them, they've produced 2 touchdowns in 2 starts. He's not sure of himself. He's gotten sacked. There was a safety. That was all his fault. And it's not like you even have great options behind him. Next man up is Tim Boyle, who you know from Detroit. He only has 3 career starts. That offensive coordinator, Hackett, has been miserable, not putting him in position to succeed. Wilson is 31st in yards per attempt and 33rd in completion percentage. No depth, no accuracy whatsoever. They've scored 20 total points in the 2 games that he's started. And they had 3 chances to win the game in the final 3 minutes, and they just never felt close. Like, they never felt like they were even remotely close to winning until that Hail Mary. I joked they should drop back and throw a Hail Mary on every play, because that was like the closest to success that they had for offensive plays. They had to punt on 8 of their first 9 possessions, and they only had 61 total yards of offense before that touchdown drive midway through the 4th quarter. So I'm not high on the Chiefs offense quite yet. They're not the same offense from years back, Eric, but their defense is a little bit better. And I think the Jets may have a really tough time moving the ball. I don't really have a strong play on the side one way or the other. I wouldn't lay the number with the Chiefs, but I would think about playing unders if you were looking to play this Sunday night game. Give us some thoughts on this one.
I really want to take the Jets here. I was really hoping this would get to 10. I was hoping the public would come in. This would get to 10, and I could.
Where are the Swifties, man? Come on, Swifties. Get this thing up to 10 for us.
Mahomes, 7 or more. Road fave, 33%. Home dogs in these Sunday night games that are getting 7 or more, 62.5% against the number. I think this number is going to be all over the place. I think that if a lot of the chalk loses out, we could see this number rise up, get closer to the Sunday kickoff. But if this gets up to 9.5, I'll look to get involved. But at this number right now, I really want nothing to do, just because you have 2. I know everyone's going to look, oh my God, they're coming off this beatdown of the Bears. But if you really watch the game, they were having a hard time the first part of the game really doing anything offensively. Jaguars have looked like an absolute train wreck. And they really having a hard time scoring against the Jets. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like this offense has been that, oh my God, watch out. It's actually the defense, which has kind of stood out to me. They only allowed the Lions to score 14 points. Lions got 7 from that Brian Branch pick 6. They limited the Jaguars, and then, they basically shut out the Bears. So I don't know. To me, this is just, I'm going to stay away. I think this is going to definitely be an under because the two defenses are what's playing really well going into this. I cannot hear you, my friend.
I was just muted for a second. Let's finish up with Monday Night Football. Let's talk Giants and the Seahawks, Eric. We have the Giants at home as a slight home dog here. Seahawks are a 1.5-point favorite on the road. The Giants starting to get a little depleted in injuries. They were down 4 starters last week, but they have had to play against probably 2 of the 5 best defenses in the league. So some of their metrics might look a little bit off. I think they're better than they may look. And Arizona might be better than we all thought, right? So now we all assume that the Giants should just crush Arizona. They're terrible. Now we're looking back, and Arizona's a lot feistier than most of us expected they would be. For the Giants, I think Dable. I'm playing the Giants here because I still have faith in Dable. I have faith that now with a couple extra days off. Remember, they played on Thursday, and now they don't play till Monday. So a couple extra days off, like a mini bye here. He's got to fix some things. He's got to find a way to get Waller more involved without Barkley there. They got to get Hyatt more involved, too, a guy that you like. He's a playmaker for them. Use Waller, use Hyatt, find a way to get them more into the passing game. Jones, you've got to use his running game a little bit more. I think those are things we can look to see in this game. Jones only had 5 yards rushing last week. For the Seahawks, 6th in EPA per dropback, 3rd in EPA per rush. They're good against the run. Where they struggle is against the pass. So this should be a game where the Giants should be able to get a little right against the passing the ball here. Seahawks also really depleted. They were down 7 starters. They lost 2 more. Cornerback Brown and the defensive end Jones, linebacker Taylor, all guys that were banged up. While they did play well offensively, they hit 5 field goals. They scored 37 points. They could have scored even more. They were only 3 of 12 on 3rd down. Walker had a really nice game for them. I think he had 159 total yards, which was the most he's had in his career. And Geno looked pretty good, completing 12 of his 13 final passes for 143 yards. I think this game will be a little bit higher scoring than what we've seen from the Giants recently. The total is 47. I actually wouldn't mind, and I'm considering possibly playing the over here. But I think the Giants just will be able to move the ball better against Seattle. Seattle will probably move the ball better here, but I'm going to play the Giants in this spot as the slight home dog here, Eric.
Yeah, home dogs getting 2.5 or less on Monday Night Football, 59% ATS. So I kind of think this is the spot. You know, they're coming off extended rest. I just don't like this team for Seattle. I think they're a little bit defensively. They have some holes. Offensively, I don't like Smith as a quarterback. You see what I did there? I didn't say Geno Smith. I said Smith. I said Smith. I didn't use.
You didn't want to hurt my feelings because it was getting me the last couple of years. Like I heard one of the times we can't trust Geno. Do you really want to lay points with Geno? Do you really? It's like, hey man, come on. You know, I've got feelings too. You know, don't discriminate against Genos over here.
Yeah, and then it's kind of weird. Like there's certain quarterbacks that kind of have like these weird kind of stats that just kind of jump off the page. And one of the better quarterbacks ATS as a dog, believe it or not,
Jones
is Daniel Jones.
Yep.
Daniel Jones as a dog, he's 60.5%, 26 and 17. So that is a pretty good sample size. So he historically covers these numbers. We're getting extended rest. I like DeBoer as an OC, as an offensive play caller. The thing that I think we're starting to see him maybe call some plays a little bit more. It was a tough spot. You know, you had an emotional comeback win. Then you had to go play the 49ers on the West Coast. Look, I think this is the spot to bounce back. I'm not high on the Seattle team. I'll take the small home dog here as well.
Folks, we will be here with you each and every week at 6:00 p.m. Eastern time, except next week, because next week I'm going to be heading to Texas. So I don't think we'll have a show. We'll talk maybe if we can get something recorded earlier, but I'm not sure schedule wise if it'll make it, if we'll be able to make it. Have a wedding that we'll be attending for my girlfriend's brother. So He's getting married, and we'll be getting out to Texas for a few days. So probably won't be having a winning ticket next week, but follow along with me and Eric on social media because we do a ton of content. Especially during football season, all throughout the week. Eric has a podcast that'll come out on Tuesday. We actually have a show every Sunday that goes through all of the Sunday and Monday football games with up-to-date lines. We go through injuries, more fantasy DFS stuff. Then later in the week, Eric and I will always preview all the games on Wednesday evening. Eric has another podcast that comes out on Friday. We have tons of content to keep you all updated on everything going on during football season. Buddy, good luck in your plays. Good luck to everyone out there. Make sure if you are in the state of Iowa, use that promo code FAST350. Sign up for a DRF Sportsbook account. We'll see you again real soon right here on